A foolish man wears no sign, but everyone sees him, eventually. Inspired by Machiavelli. You don't have to shout, "I'm weak," for the world to walk over you. You just have to respond the wrong way, a few times. And people will read you like a map. The world doesn't listen to your intentions. It studies your habits. It watches your silences. And it memorizes how you react when pressure hits. Carl Jung called this the unconscious shadow, the part of yourself you refuse to face, so it controls you from behind the curtain. It shows up in your over-explaining, your need to please, your fear of conflict. Machiavelli called it social suicide, because every time you choose comfort over clarity, every time you choose politeness over power, you make yourself expendable in a world that only rewards strength. And here's the brutal truth. If you don't recognize these 11 signs, you might not just look foolish. You might be living like one. A puppet, not a player. A servant to approval, not a master of yourself. Because power doesn't care about your heart. It responds to your posture, your control, your silence, and your strategy. If you feel like you're always overlooked, underestimated, taken for granted, this is why. And in the next few minutes, you won't just learn how power sees a fool, you'll learn how to stop being one. Let's begin. He who explains himself too much is already losing the argument. Machiavellian principle. It starts innocently. You're misunderstood at work, so you rush to clear the air. Someone questions your choices, so you lay out the timeline, the logic, the intention. You want them to understand you. You want them to know, "I didn't mean it that way. I had good reasons. I'm not the bad guy here." But the more you explain yourself, the weaker you sound, and in the eyes of others, the more guilty you look. It's not fair, right? You're trying to be transparent, to be honest, to be kind. But here's the trap. You think you're building trust. But what you're really doing is showing people how much their approval controls you. You're telling the room, "My sense of self depends on what you believe about me." And that, according to both Carl Jung and Machiavelli, is a silent confession of psychological dependency. Story. The case of Daniel. Daniel was sharp, a skilled engineer, quiet, kind, and meticulous. One day, a project went wrong. It wasn't his fault, but his name was attached to it. His manager gave him a look. Colleagues started whispering. Daniel's first instinct? He wrote an email, then a follow-up email, then a long one-on-one meeting to explain everything in detail. His intentions, his efforts, his values. He needed them to know he was a good guy. The result? His manager didn't trust him more. He trusted him less. Not because of the mistake, but because Daniel reacted like someone who had something to prove. People didn't hear his explanation. They smelled insecurity. And in the world of power, insecurity is blood in the water. Jung's view. The shadow of validation. Carl Jung would say, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." The constant urge to explain is a symptom, a surface-level strategy to avoid confronting something deeper. Your fear of being misunderstood, your fear of being seen as wrong, your fear of rejection. But here's the twist. The more you chase clarity from others, the more chaotic your inner world becomes. You become reactive, emotionally exposed, strategically predictable, and predictable people are easy to control. Machiavelli's rule: never justify, always signal strength. Machiavelli wasn't a therapist. He was a strategist. To him, perception was a weapon, and words were ammunition. He believed the wise never explain too much, because the moment you do, you invite interrogation. Every justification sounds like a defense. Every defense makes you look like you're on trial, and the world is full of judges who didn't earn the right to sit in your courtroom. Machiavelli would say, "The powerful let results speak. The weak let words cover for lack of them." Strategic. Takeaway. Stop trying to be understood. Start becoming undeniable. Let your presence create clarity. Let your results answer doubts. Let your silence make people wonder, not your explanations make them pity you. The next time someone questions your value, your decision, your identity, don't scramble to prove. Pause. Smile. Respond with strength, not desperation. Because when you stop explaining, you stop giving others the power to define your story. And that is the first step from foolishness to influence. He who seeks to please everyone pleases no one. Niccolò Machiavelli. You say yes when you mean no. You overcommit because you don't want to disappoint. You tolerate disrespect because it's not worth the conflict. You tell yourself you're being kind, but deep down, you know, you're just afraid. Afraid of being disliked, afraid of confrontation, afraid of what will happen if you stop playing nice. But here's the brutal truth. Every time you say yes out of fear, you say no to yourself. And the more you abandon your own boundaries, the more others do the same. Story. Sophie, the pleaser. Sophie was the heart of the office, always helpful, always available, always agreeable. Need someone to stay late? Ask Sophie. Need someone to pick up slack? Sophie won't say no. Need a target for blame? Sophie won't fight back. Everyone liked her, but no one respected her. Until one day she was passed over for a promotion. Again. The reason? She's too soft. She's not leadership material. She doesn't take a stand. Sophie had traded her power for peace, and in return, she got neither. Jung's lens, inferiority, hidden in niceness. Carl Jung would say Sophie wasn't being nice. She was being afraid, and masking it with politeness. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. Because when you say no, you risk rejection. And when you're still ruled by the shadow of abandonment, that rejection feels like death. So instead of being real, you bend, you fake it, you overextend, and slowly, you disappear. Machiavellian strategy. Fear is a currency. Don't let others spend yours. Machiavelli understood something modern culture avoids. Power is built on boundaries. You are only respected to the extent that you are willing to enforce your limits. To say no is to signal, I have standards. I won't be manipulated. I value my time and presence. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be liked, people start listening. Because liking is easy, respect is rare. And only those who risk being disliked can ever command real influence. Strategic. Takeaway. Stop trying to be agreeable. Start being aligned. The world doesn't reward overcommitment. It rewards clarity, conviction, strength. Your no is not cruelty. It's currency. It's armor. It's strategy. And the next time you hesitate to say it, remember, every powerful person you admire got there not by saying yes to everything, but by saying no to what weakened them. He who imitates blindly is destined to fail. Niccolò Machiavelli. You dress like them, talk like them, move like them. You mimic success, hoping it will rub off. But something always feels hollow, off, like a costume you're not built to wear. Because no matter how well you copy the moves, you'll never win the game if you don't understand the rules. And here's what no one tells you. When you mimic without meaning, you erase yourself. Historical story. The imitator of Florence. In Renaissance. Florence, a young nobleman, idolized Lorenzo de' Medici, one of the most cunning political minds of his time. The young man studied Lorenzo's style, his speeches, his posture, his alliances. He even wore the same cologne, But he missed the most important thing: Lorenzo's mind. So when the moment came, a power struggle within the city, the young noble tried to play the part. He issued commands, made deals, struck poses. But he didn't understand leverage. He didn't understand fear. He didn't understand timing. And in a single night, he lost everything: his title, his land, and his life. Why? Because imitation without depth is suicide in disguise. Jung's view: shadow projection and the false self. Carl Jung would call this a classic case of shadow projection. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung: when you lack self-awareness, you don't build an identity. You borrow one. You project strength onto others because you've buried your own. You chase their confidence while avoiding your own chaos. You look outward to avoid looking inward. But here's the irony: the deeper you hide from yourself, the more foolish you appear to the world. People don't follow copycats. They tolerate them until a real leader enters the room. Machiavellian strategy: know the terrain before you use the weapon. Machiavelli wasn't against learning from others. He was against blind mimicry. Because power isn't found in copying behavior. It's found in decoding context. The powerful don't just ask, "What did they do?" They ask, "Why did it work? And would it work for me?" Because what worked for a king in Rome might get you destroyed in Brooklyn. And what made a CEO powerful in 2010 might make you irrelevant in 2025. Wisdom is not imitation, it's adaptation. Strategic takeaway: don't be a copy, be a code breaker. Study others not to mimic them, but to master the invisible forces behind their moves. Ask, what makes this strategy effective? Where is the leverage hiding? What part of this aligns with who I am? If you don't know your core, you'll borrow everyone else's and wonder why none of it fits. And when the pressure hits, the costume tears, the act collapses, and everyone sees the truth. You were just playing a role you didn't understand. He who controls his emotions controls others. Machiavellian principle: you hear a small insult, and suddenly you can't focus for the rest of the day. Someone criticizes your idea, and you either shut down or blow up. You see someone succeed, and instead of being inspired, you spiral into self-doubt and bitterness. Your emotions rule you, and everyone knows it. They know how to push you, how to provoke you, how to keep you off balance. And that is how power is lost. Story: the triggered employee. Marcus worked in sales, smart, ambitious, well-read. But the moment he felt disrespected, even slightly, he snapped. He'd raise his voice, over-explain, get defensive, even in meetings, even in front of clients. People began to avoid him, not because he was weak, but because he was unstable. And instability, in any system, is the first thing to be cut. One day, his boss said the words he didn't expect. "You're talented, Marcus, but you're emotionally expensive." 2 weeks later, he was gone. Jung's view: the unintegrated shadow reacts. The master responds. Carl Jung taught that the part of us we refuse to face, the shadow, doesn't disappear. It waits. And when triggered, it erupts. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. When you're reactive, it means you've given away authorship of your emotions. You've outsourced your peace to whoever presses the right button. And guess what? People love to press buttons, especially when they know exactly where yours are. Being emotional isn't the problem. Being owned by your emotions is. Machiavellian strategy: never be readable, always be calculated. Machiavelli believed power required one specific trait: predictable unpredictability. When you're emotionally reactive, you become transparent. And transparency is a death sentence in political or social warfare. Because the moment people know what triggers you, They own the script. You become easy to manipulate, easy to provoke, easy to outplay. True power is not about being cold. It's about being composed, not dead inside, but so internally disciplined that chaos outside doesn't shake your core. The lion may strike with rage, the fox always waits. Machiavellian metaphor for control. Strategic takeaway. Emotion is a tool, not a compass. Use it, but never be led by it. Learn to pause, to delay your response, to ask, is this reaction strengthening my position or exposing it? When others yell, go silent. When others poke, smile. When others doubt, produce results, not protests. Because the person who can stay still in emotional storms is the one who becomes the eye of the hurricane, and that is where influence begins. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Baltasar Gracian. You keep saying, I'll start tomorrow. I just need to rest today. I'm waiting for the right time. But days become months, and the future you keep fantasizing about never shows up. Why? Because you don't live in the present like a warrior. You live in it like an escape artist. Every time reality knocks, you run for comfort, distraction, pleasure. You mistake numbing for peace, scrolling for strategy, procrastination for patience. But here's the painful truth. The longer you live only for now, the more your future becomes someone else's. Story. Mike and the loop of later. Mike wasn't lazy. He had big plans. Write a book, start a business, fix his body, build wealth. But each time he sat down to act, a little voice said, relax, you've earned it. Watch one video first. Tomorrow will be better. That voice was soothing. It also stole 5 years of his life. One morning, he opened Instagram and saw that his college friend, the one who was less talented, less creative, just sold his second company. And for the first time, Mike didn't feel jealous. He felt exposed. Not to the world, but to himself. He hadn't been unlucky. He had been escaping. Jung's lens, regression, and the fear of responsibility. Carl Jung would call this psychological regression, the unconscious retreat to comfort when growth feels too threatening. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Carl Jung. You avoid long-term discipline because deep down, you fear what responsibility will demand of you. You fear becoming powerful, because it means no more excuses, no more hiding, no more blaming. The fool clings to pleasure because pain requires transformation, and transformation is terrifying. Machiavellian strategy. Pleasure makes you soft, time makes you disposable. Machiavelli would have zero sympathy here. To him, time was leverage, or it was weakness. He believed that the greatest trap for leaders, soldiers, and citizens was the seduction of the present. Why? Because if your enemies think further ahead than you, they'll outflank you before you even realize you're in a game. The fool thinks today is all that matters. The strategist uses today to rig tomorrow. The man who cannot see what is coming will soon regret what he didn't prepare for. Machiavellian logic. Strategic takeaway. Stop asking what feels good now. Start asking, what builds leverage later? Every moment you choose distraction over discipline, you surrender the throne of your own future. Power is not built by people who go with the flow. It's built by people who carve the riverbed and make the flow go their way. So pause, zoom out, ask, is my current comfort costing me everything I say I want? Because fools don't fail in one big moment. They fail slowly, one lazy hour, one delay, one excuse at a time. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Here's the hard truth. You don't lose your power all at once. You leak it, drip by drip. Every time you explain yourself too much. Every time you say yes when you should say no. Every time you mimic others instead of mastering yourself. Every time you let your emotions control the script. Every time you trade your future for fleeting comfort. And when enough of those drops hit the floor, you look around and realize you're not living your life. You're surviving in someone else's system, a system built to reward wolves, not pleasers, to protect strategy, not sincerity, to elevate composure, not chaos. But here's the moment of awareness. You're not broken. You're just untrained. You're not powerless. You're just unconscious of the patterns you've obeyed for years. Foolishness isn't a flaw. It's a phase. And the moment you see it, fully, without denial, is the moment you stop being foolish. Power isn't a personality. It's a posture. Machiavelli didn't believe in fate. He believed in foresight, in leverage, in learning how the world works and bending it in your favor. To him, strength wasn't about aggression. It was about control, self-control, strategic control, silent control. It is not titles that honor men, but men who honor titles. Niccolò Machiavelli. Carl Jung wasn't interested in surface change. He wanted you to meet your shadow, not to fear it, but to integrate it, to become whole, so no part of you could be used against you ever again. Put them together, and here's what they teach us. The most dangerous man in the room isn't the loud one, or the charming one, or the one with all the answers. It's the one who doesn't need to be liked, doesn't rush to defend, doesn't get rattled by noise, because he's already faced himself. He's calm, clear, and cold, if necessary. He doesn't play the game to survive. He plays it to shape the board. And from today forward, so can you. Final takeaway. Foolishness is not in how little you know. It's in how long you ignore what you already do. Now you've seen the 11 signs. You've recognized yourself, maybe too clearly. Good. That means the mask is off. So what's next? Not guilt, not shame, strategy. You don't need to be perfect. You need to become intentional, not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, now. Because power waits for no one. If this video didn't just teach you, but woke you up. Comment below. From foolish to focused. This isn't a motivational speech. This is war strategy for the battlefield of your mind. Subscribe now, and don't miss the next video. The 6 power shifts that break the cycle of weakness. Until then, speak less, see more, and build from the inside out.